Hello and welcome back to another episode of WJ Live. I'm George Upper, editor-in-chief of the Western Journal, which powers WJ Live, reminding you, as always, to click on that subscribe button and on the bell next to it so you never miss an episode of the show, where you'll always get the truth about the news of the day from people you can trust. People like supervising reporter Michael Austin, who will tell us today who is really to blame for the child pornography that keeps showing up in America's public school libraries. And people like assignment editor Caleb Gina, who has some observations today regarding gas prices and President Joe Biden's economy. And speaking of President Joe Biden, JFK Assassination Records, which were set to be released this year due to President Biden, will be going back into the archives. That's a Oliver Stone joke for those of you who've seen the movie. In a statement on Friday, the White House announced that long classified documents regarding the assassination of former President John F. Kennedy, quote, shall be withheld from full public disclosure until December 15th, 2022. So about 14 months, 59 years after Kennedy was killed in Dallas, Texas. According to CBS News, despite federal law that mandates all records on the event, quote, should be eventually disclosed to enable the public to become fully informed about the history surrounding the assassination, Biden said the federal archivist needs one more year to make appropriate redactions to minimize, quote, identifiable harm. While former President Donald Trump released several thousand pages of files under the President John F. Kennedy Assassination Records Collection Act of 1992, which I will now call the JFK Act for the remainder of this broadcast, because ain't nobody got time for that. Trump did hold back some other documents citing some national security concerns. And according to a statement last Friday from President Biden, the federal government has been reviewing these redactions for 3 years, since 2018. They apparently need still more time because it's the Biden administration, I guess. And, you know, were we expecting them to be on time with this? I don't know why we would have done that. The so-called JFK Act required the release of these documents within 25 years of the act becoming law, which was, of course, 29 years ago tomorrow. So we are 4 years behind in our homework. However, the act allowed a postponement of some record releases if it remains necessary, quote, to protect against an identifiable harm to the military defense, intelligence operations, law enforcement, or the conduct of foreign relations that is of such gravity that it outweighs the public interest in disclosure, unquote. That, of course, gives rise to a very important question. Whether you're a conspiracy theorist, a history buff, or just someone who thinks transparency in government is cool, what could possibly be in these documents 59 years later, or 58 years later, 59 years next year, after the assassination that could produce, quote, an identifiable harm to the military defense, intelligence operations, law enforcement, or the conduct of foreign relations at this late date? We're talking about events from 1963 here, before any of us were born. That's even before I was born. I was born a long time ago. Maybe we will get an answer to that question in 14 months. Maybe we will not. In the meantime, gentlemen, what do you think the chances are that the Biden administration actually hits this new self-imposed deadline of December 15th, 2022 for the release of these documents? Michael?
Well, the Biden administration doesn't do very good with deadlines. I think we know that that's true.
At least they didn't blame Trump for creating this new deadline. That's a step in the right direction.
Give him time.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Give
true.
him time.
Yeah, and when they do meet a deadline, that could sometimes be even worse.
Yeah, we've seen that happen.
We saw
sure.
with Afghanistan. Yep. So, no, I don't think they're going to hit that deadline. If they do hit it, I think they're just going to release like a page that's still fully redacted and say, "Oh, see, we hit the deadline."
Yeah, they did say that there may be some documents this December 15th that they would be able to release. They didn't make any promises about that. Caleb, what do you think? Were we going to see finally the bottom of this by the end of next year?
Maybe. I think part of the reason I think they're holding on to this is because this will be a great way to distract the media cycle in the event that they need one down the road.
Yeah.
If something catastrophic happens, which, knock on wood, nobody here wants that to happen. If something does go wrong and then all of a sudden they find themselves inside another media hurricane, like they've stumbled into over and over and over again over these 9-10 months, then wow, all of a sudden they can magically drop these files out into the public and immediately change the narrative to talk about JFK. So that's, in my estimation, what they're doing here.
Caleb, my hat is off to you, sir. That's even more cynical than my thinking on this, which is that's hard to do. Nice work. So I've believed for some years that LBJ had some level of involvement. He was the vice president at the time, had some level of involvement in this assassination. You know, not necessarily the full-blown conspiracy theory, of the movies, but maybe in covering up some part of the investigation afterwards, because there were perhaps foreign relations issues at play, or people involved in the thing that he didn't want to see get in trouble. I've always believed, not always, I believed for some time that it has to be something at that level that keeps something this big, this secret for this long. It has to impugn somebody at the highest levels of the federal government. That's my belief. I could be wrong. That's what I believe. Chris Golden, who covered this story for the Western Journal, speculated that Cuba perhaps was involved in it, and that has been speculation, of course, for decades. Yes. This was, of course, just for those of you who may not recall, Kennedy was assassinated at the height of the Cold War, just about a year, almost exactly a year after the resolution of the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, about 10 years after the Marxist Revolution, Castro's revolution in Cuba. So, and Biden and the left in America love the leftists in Cuba, and they don't want to do anything that might embarrass them.
Come on, George, don't you know about their literacy rates?
So, there's some thought that Biden and his crew are working to protect that relationship, or protect the communist snowflakes in Cuba from exposure of this thing that happened 6 decades ago, which I, suppose isn't a crazy idea. But let's just have some fun and speculate for a minute. Caleb, what would your favorite conspiracy theory be? Who would you lay the blame for this assassination at the feet of?
See, earlier we were having our production meeting, and I'm a pathetic Scorsese fan. I am absolutely just crazy about his movies. So The Irishman, of course, takes it upon itself to educate the Western world about the real happenings behind this event. And I think you made a point earlier, which I think is very well received, which is the people that love those movies even more than me is the mafia.
Yeah.
Because they look like these absolute ingenious, super powerful, right? Where they have like the gears of history turning at their behest.
Right.
So when it comes to basically what I think happened, I think your point with LBJ is very apt, because people forget that they had a toxic relationship before the two of them jumped on the same ticket. Yeah. I mean, Johnson obviously was the Senate Majority Leader, and he used to call Jack Little Boy Blue and Skeletor and all sorts of derogatory names.
And he was a conniver. I mean, LBJ was
the most
by
taking Jack out. It was LBJ. Yeah. So I think I probably lean a little bit more in that direction. I think also, just to talk about why they're continuing to maybe keep this under wraps, is there such a distrust of major institutions already present in the country? Can you imagine if they came out and said, we killed Kennedy? I mean, it would basically take whatever tatters they have left of their credibility and just tear it to pieces.
Yeah. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've brushed up on my JFK assassination documentaries. But
well, you better get on that, son. I don't know what you're waiting for.
I'm going to have to binge them before this comes out.
Yeah, you got 14 months.
Biden delays it another 20 years. But government involvement seems like it has to be the case here with how we would have answers by now. This was this was like the biggest assassination of the past, I don't know, 50 since since the start of World War I. I don't know. So
yeah, what the law says, the JFK Act says that the documents won't be produced in the event that somebody can identify a harm to military defense, intelligence operations, law enforcement. So all of those are internal, right?
Yeah.
And you could see why we wouldn't maybe want to do that.
Yep.
Or the conduct of foreign relations. So assuming they're abiding by this law, which is that's a leap to begin with.
Yeah.
But let's play with that for a second. The conduct of foreign relations, no matter whose relations, what other country would be damaged by this, since 1992, some administration has been interested in damaging those relations, right? I mean, we've flipped those sides more than once. So I can't believe it's that.
Right.
That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, that somebody would have been motivated to go ahead and do it. I don't care what Cuba thinks about us.
Yeah.
There you go. So that tells me that the identifiable harm is to the military defense, intelligence operations, or law enforcement, probably, if we grant the assumption that they're going by the law, which I freely admit is a leap. All right, we may be months or years away from an answer to some of these questions, despite the fact that they've been swirling around for decades. But Michael Austin has an answer to a more recent question. Who is behind the kiddie porn that keeps popping up in America's public schools?
Yeah, and so this book, Genderqueer, I believe we ran a story about it about a month ago. Some parent came up at the school board meeting. She brought this book she had checked out at the school library. She printed out pictures from the book. She read excerpts from it, and it was porn. There are pictures of characters who look juvenile, performing sex acts on one another, and the schools were disseminating these books to minors, to people, one school, 7th graders, 6th graders had access to this book. Then weeks later, we saw the book pop up at another school, and then another school, and another school. And it's been all over the country.
Popular book.
Public schools, across the country have been putting this book in their school libraries and allowing minors to basically read porn in school. And so we did some digging into this. Places like the Federalist, they did some digging into this. And we found that the book is being promoted and reviewed by these organizations that school libraries use to determine what to put in their, catalog. So the School Library Journal, for instance, was one of them, who gave Genderqueer a, rave review, said it will resonate with teens. It's also a great resource for those who identify as non-binary or asexual, as well as those who know someone who identifies that way and wish to better understand them. That's what the School Library Journal said. And so,
as long as understanding them means defining people by the sex acts that they participate in, it sounds like it might be accurate.
Yes. And then another organization, which is also used for the same purpose, the Young Adult Library Services Association, gave the book an Alex Award, which is an award they give to books that have a special appeal to young adults aged 12 through 18 years old.
I'll bet it does.
Yeah. So now we know this is just systemic. This whole system is corrupt from the from the roots to the stems. And basically you just have left-wing activists recommending what books these school libraries need to take in. The school libraries take them at their word, and then that's how you end up getting porn put straight into the hands of children in schools all over the country.
Read that Alex Award criteria again. I mean, that sounds like porn to me when you read it.
Yeah. It
had like special meaning for 12 to 18-year-olds?
Special appeal to young adults aged 12 through 18.
Yeah, porn. How could porn not win that? I mean, how... You could apply that to almost anything. Special
Get
appeal.
This in their kind of description of the book. They said gender and sexuality comes into beautiful focus in this graphic memoir, expressively illustrated with retro colors and simple lines. Readers will recognize a kindred spirit in Kababe, that's the name of the author, and or gain insight into what it's like to identify outside of the cisgender heterosexual norm. And so now we know how it happened, but something that's a little bit murkier is why it happened. What are these people thinking? And, we won't describe exactly what the pictures show, but it is, you see extremely graphic, pornographic images. These are, characters having sex. They look like they're juveniles. It's a book about, a kid's journey through sex. Now, activists have come forward later on and said, "Oh, these people are supposed to be in their 20s." Well, I don't care how old they are.
Yeah. That one turned 18 yesterday. Give me a break.
But, a big reason behind this is the way the left views sex and sexuality and the way they view children. And to them, I think you should be introducing porn, you should be introducing sex to kids at an extremely young age. Otherwise, how are they going to know how to develop? How are they going to know if they are gay or transgender and all of this? What do you guys think? Why do you think the left wants to put these sorts of books into the hands of children?
Ultimately?
Yes.
Because they want to have sex with them.
Yes.
That's why I think. I truly think that it is, there are no boundaries on the left. And that's why, they're progressive. Where does progressivism end? What's the goal? There's no goal. It just keeps going.
Right.
You're right. There's no, and there have been debates between progressives and conservatives in the past, and conservatives say, great, what's the goal? When are you going to stop? And they can't define it. There is no stopping place. There's no stopping place with this either. There's no stopping place until I get everything I want.
Yeah.
And if that includes sex with a 3-year-old, who are you to tell me that I'm not supposed to have
Well,
that?
they keep telling us love is love is love
Right,
is love.
sure.
They keep saying that. And this is the exact sort of material that if you were a pedophile, you would get a young person to read, and then that would normalize the behavior so that you could take advantage of it. So they're like basically creating a climate where pedophiles can just run free. They can, they're indoctrinating the kids for the pedophiles. So what do you think about all this, Caleb?
I think what the left likes to do is when they want to go after a taboo, they move very gradually towards it. And then all of a sudden we all look up and realize we are in a bad place. I think about in Europe, this relates to basically their acceptance of euthanasia, where for decades, especially after World War II, they were really uncomfortable with this idea of medically assisted suicide, essentially.
Sure.
Yes.
And then time goes by.
With good reason.
They erode the arguments against it gradually, and then all of a sudden you have people in a lot of those countries that there's no faux pas attached to that whatsoever. So I think it's the same thing when it comes to gender and kind of sexual politics in this country, whereas they figure if you start early enough and you do it slowly, gradually, there's going to be this movement to the place we ultimately want to get to. And I think that's something we sometimes neglect because we're so fixated on the individual thing, we're missing the larger trajectory.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're wrong there, Caleb. There was a piece this weekend in something I don't normally read, The Atlantic maybe, about the Netherlands and how, and sorry, libertarians are going to hate me for this, but how the drug legalization in the Netherlands has just destroyed the country because what started with, what's it going to hurt society if somebody has a joint? Turned into drug kingpins murdering journalists who dare cover, in the streets. Any journalist who dares cover the movement of hard drugs in the country now is taking his life into his own hands. It's the same kind of thing. It's just a little thing. It's just a little, and we make the same argument. Lots of people on the right in the West make that same argument about drug legalization. We have people in this building who make that argument. And it is just incrementalism. And I'm not a knee jerk, like, if I thought that there were benefit to that, I'd be all for it. And I probably am like in favor of, for instance, medical marijuana. If you can show me that has true medical benefit to it, I'm probably all right with that under doctor's care, prescription, whatever. But what the left wants to do is just take a little bit. It's progress. That's why they call it progressivism. We're going to progress here, and okay, now we're here. Now we're going to progress here. It never ends. It never ends.
Yeah, it's got a better ring to it than gradualism.
Yeah,
It doesn't roll off the
incrementalism.
tongue quite as nicely.
Yeah,
It's progress. How can you argue with progress? Come on.
there's always going to be another level they need to get to.
Absolutely. It never ends.
And I think the most eye-opening aspects of this story is that when most people talk about how corrupt our school system is with the left, they think, oh, it's just we got teachers tend to be a little too liberal, or school administrators or the school board. No, It's all of those things. It's the organizations responsible outside of the school. It's the entire infrastructure of education is completely overrun with these liberals who want to progress, who want to push these values onto children through the public school system. Because obviously the parents don't know what's right. We need to tell them what's right. And it just kind of speaks to this idea that we need to have a freedom from religion in our schools. And a lot of people take that to mean, oh, we need to get Christianity out of our schools. No. The government cannot teach its own values to the children. Right. You go there, you learn basic facts, you get your values from home, you get your values from your religious institutions. You don't get any values given to the state that are then passed down to you. And so, does that mean maybe some less Christian things in school? Possibly, but that also means you can't teach any sort of moralistic values that the state determines. And so most people think that freedom from religion clause, that is only, ascribed to certain religious systems. That's any system of value or meaning. That's what the founders intended. So that's just one thing we need to get back to. But, as parents continue to respond to this stuff, how do you think we're going to get rid of this from the schools? How do you think parents what do they need to do going forward to make sure that their kids aren't reading pornography when they go to public school?
I've said this before on the show, get your kids out of public schools. Get them out. My wife taught in public schools for decades. I taught in private schools for several years. And I'm just telling you that we were associated with good schools. They were good schools. Get them out. Get them out of public schools. You would never in a million years take your child and hand it to an agent of the state. Who do you think pays teachers in public schools? They are agents of the state. Some of them are very good people. Don't get me wrong. I'm not, but they are agents of the state. You don't hand over your children to them. There is no situation in which that is wise. None. Get them out. Homeschool them if you can. Put them in private school if you can't. But get them out of public schools. That's the only answer.
Caleb, do you think school choice can come into play here in any way?
Absolutely. The idea essentially, I think, is just putting the control back in the parents' hands.
Yeah, sure.
Where it's, what are they teaching? Where are they learning this? How is this going to be used down the road? That's always been the expectation with education, where we take the best of the past and we fuse it with what we have to what we want to ultimately produce as a future.
Yeah.
So I saw some comments from Terry McAuliffe last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, where he's like, oh, well, parents shouldn't be involved in what the students learn. And that's just preposterous for a public official to be saying as much. The parents absolutely should be shaping it, using their morals, what were passed down, using their faith.
Absolutely.
And then making that supreme, as opposed to saying, well, I'm just going to drop the kids off on the curb, make sure that the school bus takes them there, and then puts them in the leftist indoctrination factory and pushes them out.
My wife got her master's in school administration probably 2 decades ago. And I don't remember what the project was or the assignment or whatever, but she had to come up with sort of a mission statement for what she wanted to do as a school administrator. And hers was something along the lines of partner with parents in the education of their children. And everyone else in that class thought she was mad that she would involve parents at that level. They thought she was crazy. Yeah. And that was 2 decades ago. You decide where you think they are now. They've continued to progress.
And under the Biden administration, we've seen a lot of issues like this that just so directly impact people's lives. And, the public school system, the failures within.
It's huge.
That's a big one. Another big one that's becoming just more and more of an issue now is gas prices. So,
what a great segue. This guy's a professional.
He is.
You kind of ruin it by pointing out
time.
that it's a great segue.
Oh, is that what I'm doing?
Instead of just
kind of removing the curtain here and showing them Oz at the controls.
Exactly.
My bad. So the irony is with my story is I don't have to tell you what's going on because I guarantee you filled your car up in the last couple of days. You looked at the attendant and you said, what is going on? So I just want to throw a couple of specific stats at you. So next time your lefty buddy tries to act like everything's going swell under Uncle Joe, here's a couple of nice data points. The first thing is our national average for the price of fuel is $3.39 a gallon. All states, every state in the union has an average gas price that's higher than $3. We all saw over the weekend the pictures of the one California gas station that had that $7.29 per gallon cost. I mean, that's absolutely absurd. California's got the highest gas prices in the nation at $4.54. Something else I thought was interesting when I was looking at the master list is 15 of the 20 most expensive gas states are blue states. So
Dude, what a
Biden's
shock.
own voters are the ones that are actually paying the most at the pump for the decision they made back in November of last year. So I think part of the reason why we're seeing this happen, and I'm going to open it up to you guys to just kind of spitball what you see some other causalities are.
Yeah.
I think killing Keystone, putting the moratorium on new drilling projects, doing the vaccine mandate, and then also the generous federal stimulus to basically disincentivize people to work.
Yeah.
All of these things have like fused together to create this situation where Americans, even those who are not like politically active, you would say, or people who are overly involved in the process, are all of a sudden looking at the situation around them and are asking for answers. So just to address those people directly, Michael and then George, like, what do you think is going on insofar as why the price is the way it is?
Well, you see all of these talking heads like giving you all this spin about, oh, it's because of this. Oh, it's because of this. Oh, COVID did this. And then that's why gas is down. Well, COVID was under Trump as well. And this didn't seem to be happening very much. It's really simple. When there's less gas available, the gas that's there costs more. And when you have the person in charge heavily regulating, the gas and oil industry, you're going to have less gas available. That's why else would he be begging for OPEC to send us more, if not for that lack of supply? So it's pretty simple. This is what leftists do. This is what Democrats do when they're talking about their whole climate change agenda. It costs all of us so much more.
Yeah, and gas is one of those things that impacts the economy so much, not just because all of us use it to one degree or another, but because when gas prices go up, that's obviously a key indicator of inflation. It's one of the goods that's used to determine inflation rates. But it doesn't just end there, because gas contributes to the prices of all the other goods in that basket that are used to, determine what inflation rates are.
Pretty much everything.
Yeah. If you buy a refrigerator tomorrow, it's going to cost more than it did 3 months ago, because they're going to spend more delivering it to you. So that refrigerator now includes the price of gas in it. But it's literally everything. It's produce, it's furniture, it's anything Amazon delivers to your door. Gas adds to inflation by being more expensive, and then it adds to the inflation of everything else by being more expensive. So it's the gift that keeps on giving. Yeah, and it's one of those. It is hard to break that cycle once it gets going, unless you make some sort of key regulatory change. Which I'm not looking to this administration to do that anytime soon.
I think those are all sound points, which leads us to the next aspect that I want to ask you guys, which is, how long will this last? Because we've seen a number of comments from like Janet Yellen over the weekend where she was saying, well, the high inflation should go down sometime maybe at the end of 2022.
It's ugly when they bring Yellen out. They only bring Yellen out for serious damage control. That's true.
And I think it's very Democrat of her to be like, well, you can't prove me wrong for 14 months.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I might be right.
And then you'll forget that I said it by the time we get there.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
Michael, how long is this going to last?
I'm not enough of an expert to give you an estimation. They've put us in a position where it's going to last a really long time. I definitely know that for sure. I mean, we think back, I remember when we were all getting our stimulus checks, people were talking about, oh, this will be great. Oh, I can't wait to get the money. And then nobody really understood what the long-term costs were. When the government prints off that much money, you have inflation, and then now Biden, regulating the oil and gas industries. All of these things are combining. They're hitting us now. So I could definitely see this till end of 2022 from all the people that I've listened to. So.
Yeah. I got two answers for your question, Caleb. One is maybe not too long, because gas is a commodity and there are a lot of suppliers. And so as prices rise, OPEC doesn't need Biden to come ask them to produce more. They have an incentive to produce more, and that would increase supply and tend to have downward pressure on prices. That's how the market works when it's allowed to function properly, which of course it isn't. But maybe if prices rise too dramatically, too quickly, I could see OPEC and other oil-producing nations getting involved to mitigate that somewhat. The other thing I could see jumping in to mitigate it is a year from now, we're going to have some elections. And there are some Democrats who are hoping to win some of those elections. And so Biden is going to start coming under a great deal of pressure. If 12 months from now, we're still seeing these prices where they are now or even higher, and could be higher for sure, we're going to see a lot of pressure on the Biden administration from state level elected officials, from House of Representative members, from senators who are up for re-election, to ease the regulatory burden. It's amazing how effective they think regulations are unless they're trying to be elected, in which case they suddenly realize, oh, this isn't working the way I thought it was going to. It has unintended consequences. Go figure. So we'll see how that works. We certainly at the Western Journal will keep you all posted on how we see that coming about, and as new developments happen, which they happen every day. In fact, maybe you saw the story yesterday in the Wall Street Journal about the fact that Facebook knew in 2019 that algorithm changes that they had made were hitting conservative publishers more than others. This is not me saying this. Wall Street Journal yesterday. You can look it up. We've been telling you that for years at the Western Journal, though, so it has been me saying it. We first published results of our research into that topic over 3.5 years ago. Wall Street Journal figured it out yesterday. That's why you need to become a member of the Western Journal. Every new member supports our work. Without members like you, we are far too dependent for our revenue on big tech companies like Facebook, who don't want you to know the truth, like Google, who are run by leftists, who literally would like to see the Western Journal go out of business. Literally, they've tried to do it. You can help the Western Journal stand up to big tech tyrants. And when you do, we have a gift for you. When you sign up today for an annual membership, we're going to give you 2 of those 12 months for free. So you're going to pay for 10 months and get 2 of them on us. You'll get exclusive content that isn't available anywhere else. More importantly, you'll know you're making a difference on the very front lines of this war against lies and fake news in the mainstream media. Please become a member today. Not only do your dollars support us financially and make us less dependent on these leftist social media platforms, but your support just means the world to us. We see those numbers every month, and it's just so encouraging to know that there are people out there who value what we do enough to put a few dollars towards it. And trust me, it's just a few dollars. It's not a lot of money. With that, we will bid you farewell until next time. We'll be back to bring you truth every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, right here at the Western Journal, powered by, right here. Sorry, I got that backwards. Right here at WJ Live. I got the times right. That's usually what I screw up. We'll see you again next time on WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. Till then, stay safe.